The darkness of space held many secrets, but none as dangerous as the fleet that moved through it now. 47 warships glided silently toward their target, their hulls black as the void around them. Inside the lead ship, Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the stars through the wide view screen. His gray eyes were cold, carrying a weight that no man should have to bear. Jake was tall and lean, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations, no medals. There was no need for such things. Every person in his fleet knew what they were fighting for. They carried the memory of a dead world in their hearts. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan walked up to Jake, holding a small device that glowed with information. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with short blonde hair and sharp green eyes. Like everyone else on the ship, she had been born in space. She had never seen Earth except in old pictures and videos. "Commander, we are 12 hours from the target," Amy said. "All ships are in position. We can begin whenever you give the order." Jake nodded slowly. He looked at the tactical display that showed their destination. Viridian Prime. A rich world, home to 2 billion people who had no idea what was coming. They lived in peace, protected by the Galactic Council that ruled over 1,000 planets. They had forgotten about Earth. They had forgotten about humanity, but humanity had not forgotten them. 4,000 years had passed since the Council destroyed Earth. Jake's ancestors had watched from a mining station near Saturn as their homeworld burned. 15 billion people died in a single day. The Council had decided that humans were too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. So they had eliminated the problem. No warning, no mercy, just death from orbit. The few thousand humans who survived had fled into the dark corners of space. They hid in dead systems and forgotten asteroids. They salvaged old ships and learned to survive on nothing. And slowly, generation after generation, they prepared for this day. "How many ships does the Council have at Viridian Prime?" Jake asked. 30 defense platforms and maybe a dozen patrol ships," Amy replied. "Nothing that can stop us." Jake turned to face his crew. There were 20 people on the bridge, each one focused on their task. Chief Engineer Paul Brennan sat at his station, monitoring the ship's power systems. Navigator Carlos Bennett plotted their course through space. Intelligence Officer Greg Walton tracked enemy communications. And standing near the back, Colonel Nina Harper commanded the Marines who would soon drop to the planet's surface. These people were his family, not by blood but by shared purpose. They had all lost something when Earth died. Even though they were born thousands of years later, the loss was real. It lived in every story they heard, every history lesson they learned, every time they looked up at the stars and knew they had no true home. "All personnel, this is Commander Morrison," Jake said, his voice carrying through every speaker on every ship in the fleet. 4,000 years ago, the Galactic Council committed genocide. They killed our world because they feared what we might become. They scattered our people and tried to erase us from history. Today we remind them that humanity does not die quietly. Today we return. A cheer went up from the crew. It was not a happy sound. It was the cry of people who had waited lifetimes for justice. Dr. Lisa Chang stood in the science section of the ship, surrounded by data screens. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her job was to preserve human culture, to keep alive the memory of Earth. She had spent years studying old records, watching videos of cities and forests and oceans that no longer existed. "Do you think this is right?" asked the young technician working beside her. Lisa looked at him. His name was Terry, and he was barely 20 years old. He had joined the fleet because he wanted to be part of something important. "The Council killed our world," Lisa said quietly. "They murdered billions of innocent people. They never apologized. They never even admitted it was wrong. So yes, I think this is right. Not because I want revenge, but because they need to understand that actions have consequences." On the observation deck, several crew members gathered to watch as the fleet prepared for battle. Among them was Carlos Bennett, who had finished his navigation duties for the moment. He stood next to a viewport, staring at the distant stars. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth," Carlos said to the person beside him. "She said the sky was blue, not black. That rain fell from clouds and trees grew from the ground. I always thought they were just fairy tales." "They were real," said the other person, a medical officer named Helen Brooks. "All of it was real, and the Council took it from us." The fleet moved closer to Viridian Prime. Jake returned to his command chair, his fingers tapping on the armrest. He had planned this operation for 3 years. Every detail had been considered. Every risk calculated. They would hit hard and fast, overwhelming the defenses before the Council could respond. But this was more than a military operation. This was a message. Humanity was back and they would no longer hide in the shadows. "Commander, we are entering the outer system," Amy announced. "Preparing to drop out of slipspace. All ships, battle stations," Jake ordered. "Weapons charged and ready. Remember, we target military installations only. Avoid civilian casualties." The ship hummed with energy as its systems powered up. All around them, the other ships in the fleet did the same. They had 47 capital ships, each one as powerful as anything the Council had. They also had over 200 smaller frigates and countless fighters. It was the largest human fleet assembled in 4,000 years. Paul Brennan's voice came over the comm system. "All systems are green, Commander. We are ready." Nina Harper checked her equipment one last time. She commanded 5,000 Marines, all trained for combat, all enhanced with genetic modifications that made them faster and stronger than normal humans. They would be the first to set foot on Viridian Prime, securing key locations and ensuring the population did not resist. "Drop out of slipspace in 30 seconds, Carlos announced. Jake stood up from his chair. This was the moment everything changed. For 4,000 years, humanity had been hiding, waiting, preparing. Now the waiting was over. "All ships execute," Jake commanded. The fleet emerged from slipspace like ghosts materializing from nothing. One moment, the space around Viridian Prime was empty. The next moment, it was filled with human warships. The planet's defense systems immediately began screaming alarms. But by then, it was already too late. Jake watched as the tactical display updated, showing the confused and panicked response from the Council forces. They had been caught completely by surprise. Their sensors had not detected the human ships until they were already there. "Open a channel," Jake said. "All frequencies." Amy worked her controls. "Channel open, Commander." Jake's face appeared on every screen on Viridian Prime and on every Council ship in the system. Billions of people suddenly saw him, this human who should not exist. "People of the Galactic Council," Jake said, his voice steady and cold. "We are humanity. 4,000 years ago, you destroyed our world. You killed 15 billion of our people. You thought you had eliminated us. You were wrong. Today we return, and we will have justice for what you did." He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Fire." The human weapons fired with precision that shocked the Council defenders. Beams of concentrated energy lanced across space, striking defense platforms with perfect accuracy. The platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their shields useless against the advanced human technology. Admiral Kexthor of the Council Defense Fleet woke to chaos. Alarms screamed through his quarters as he rushed to the command center. He was a veteran of 40 years, but in all that time he had never seen real combat. The Council had maintained peace for 3,000 years. War was something that happened in history books, not in real life. "Report," Kexthor demanded as he entered the command center. "Unknown ships have appeared in orbit," his tactical officer said, his 4 eyes wide with fear. "They bypassed all our sensors. They are destroying our defense platforms." "How many ships?" "Over 200 confirmed, but more keep appearing." "Sir, their weapons are cutting through our shields like they do not exist." Kexthor stared at the tactical display. The human fleet was positioned perfectly, controlling all approach vectors to the planet. Every defense platform was already destroyed or disabled. His patrol ships were scattered and outgunned. "Who are they?" Kexthor asked. "They claim to be human, sir. But that is impossible. Humanity was extinct." "Apparently not," Kexthor said bitterly. He opened a communication channel to the largest human ship. "Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Kexthor of the Council Defense Fleet. You are in violation of Council space. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." The response came quickly. A human face appeared on his screen. The man looked to be in his 40s with hard eyes and a cold expression. "Admiral, this is Commander Jake Morrison. We are not standing down. We are taking control of this system. Order your ships to power down their weapons and surrender. Any ship that resists will be destroyed." "I cannot surrender an entire world to invaders," Kexthor protested. "Then you will watch your ships die," Jake replied. "The choice is yours." One of Kexthor's patrol ships opened fire on a human frigate. The human ship's shields absorbed the blast easily. then returned fire. The Council patrol ship exploded in seconds, its crew of 40 killed instantly. "Hold fire," Kexthor ordered quickly. "All ships power down weapons." "A wise choice," Jake said, then cut the transmission. On the surface of Viridian Prime, panic spread through the cities. People looked up at the sky and saw the human ships hanging there like dark clouds. They had lived their entire lives in peace, protected by the Council. The idea of invasion was foreign to them, something that happened on primitive worlds, not in civilized space. Governor Peltran stood in his office, watching the feeds from orbit. He was an old Orvani with silver scales and wise eyes. He had governed Viridian Prime for 20 years, and in all that time, nothing like this had ever happened. "Get me the Council homeworld," Peltran ordered his staff. "We need reinforcements now." "Sir, all communication channels are being jammed by the human ships. We cannot reach anyone outside the system." Peltran felt his blood run cold. The humans had thought of everything. They were not just attacking. They were occupying. Aboard the Retribution, Jake watched as drop pods began launching from the fleet. Each pod carried 20 Marines falling through the atmosphere like meteors. Colonel Nina Harper was in the first wave, leading her troops personally. Nina sat in her pod surrounded by 19 other Marines. The pod shook violently as it hit the atmosphere, the heat shields glowing red. She checked her weapon one more time, a rifle designed to punch through the heaviest armor. 2 minutes to landing, the pod's computer announced. Nina looked at her troops. They were young, most of them in their 20s. But they had trained their entire lives for this. Every one of them was enhanced, their bodies modified to be faster and stronger than normal humans. They could see in the dark, hold their breath for 10 minutes, and survive injuries that would kill an ordinary person. "Remember your training," Nina said over the comm. "We secure the government buildings and the communications center. No civilian casualties unless absolutely necessary. Anyone who raises a weapon against you is a combatant. Everyone else gets one warning." The pod hit the ground hard, the impact dampeners absorbing most of the shock. The doors blew open, and Nina's Marines poured out, weapons ready. They had landed in the center of the capital city, right in the plaza in front of the governor's palace. Hundreds of civilians stood frozen, staring at the armored humans who had just fallen from the sky. Council security forces were already moving in, their weapons drawn. "This is your only warning," Nina shouted, her voice amplified by her helmet. "Drop your weapons and stand down. We do not want to hurt anyone." The security forces hesitated. They were trained for crowd control and minor crimes, not for fighting enhanced soldiers from a supposedly extinct species. Their leader, a young officer named Kelvin, looked at his small force of 20 guards, then at the 50 human Marines spreading out through the plaza. "Stand down," Kelvin ordered his troops. "Lower your weapons," Nina nodded with approval. "Smart choice. Now take us to the governor." Inside the palace, Governor Peltran watched the security feeds as human Marines entered the building. They moved with military precision, clearing rooms and securing corridors. Within 10 minutes, they were at his office door. Nina Harper entered first, her weapon lowered but ready. She looked at the old Orvani sitting behind the desk. "Governor Peltran, I am Colonel Nina Harper of the Human Liberation Fleet. You are not under arrest, but you are under our protection. Viridian Prime is now under human control." "This is an act of war," Peltran said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The war started 4,000 years ago when your council destroyed Earth," Nina replied. "We are just finishing it." All across Viridian Prime, similar scenes played out. Human Marines landed at every major city, every military base, every communication center. The council forces, unprepared and outgunned, surrendered without significant resistance. By the end of the first day, the entire planet was under human control. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution, reviewing reports from the surface. The operation had gone almost perfectly. 3 human Marines wounded, none killed. Council casualties were minimal, mostly from accidents during the surrender process. "We control all major population centers," Amy Sullivan reported. "Communication networks are under our control. The civilian population is cooperating. Any resistance? None worth mentioning. The council has grown soft. 3,000 years of peace made them forget how to fight." Greg Walton approached with new intelligence. "Commander, I have intercepted communications from beyond the system. The council homeworld knows what happened. They are calling an emergency session. How long before they send reinforcements? Days at minimum, maybe weeks. They need time to mobilize. They were not expecting this, Jake nodded. Everything was going according to plan. But he knew this was just the beginning. Taking Viridian Prime was easy. Holding it against the full might of the Council would be the real challenge. Dr. Lisa Chang worked in the archives building, downloading everything she could find about Council history and technology. She had teams of specialists going through files looking for anything useful. The Council had thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, and Lisa wanted all of it. "Look at this," one of her assistants said, pulling up a file. "It is the original debate about Earth. The actual recordings from the Council session." Lisa watched the video. She saw Council members arguing about what to do with humanity. Some wanted to guide humans, to help them join the galactic community. Others wanted to isolate Earth, to quarantine humanity until they proved they could be peaceful. But the majority voted for elimination. They called it a preventive measure, a necessary action to protect galactic stability. "They were afraid of us," Lisa said quietly. "That is why they killed our world. Not because we did something wrong, but because they feared what we might do in the future." "Is that supposed to make it better?" "No," Lisa said. "It makes it worse. They killed 15 billion innocent people over a fear that might never have come true." Back on the Retribution, Jake received a communication request from the Council homeworld. He accepted it, and Chancellor Velnora's face appeared on his screen. She was a tall, elegant being with 3-fingered hands and large, intelligent eyes. "Commander Morrison, I am Supreme Chancellor Velnora of the Galactic Council. Your actions constitute an act of war against the Council and its member states." "Your Council committed genocide against my people," Jake replied calmly. "What we have done is self-defense." That event happened 4,000 years ago. None of the current Council members were alive then. You cannot hold us responsible for the actions of our ancestors. Yet you enjoyed 4,000 years of peace and prosperity built on our extinction, Jake said. You never apologized. You never acknowledged what was done. You just moved on and forgot about us, and what do you want? Velnora asked. "Justice," Jake said simply. "And a place in this galaxy for my people. We will discuss terms later. For now, Viridian Prime remains under our control. Any attempt to retake it by force will result in war. Choose your next actions carefully, Chancellor." He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. They had crossed a line now. There was no going back. Continue the mobilization, but slow it down. Give diplomacy a chance. On Viridian Prime, Jake received a message from the Chancellor. His officers gathered around him, debating whether to trust the offer. It could be a trap, Nina warned. They buy time with negotiations while they position their fleet for an attack. Or it could be genuine, Lisa countered. Not everyone in the Council supported what happened to Earth. Some of them might actually want peace. Jake looked at each of his officers in turn. These people had become his family over the years. They had trained together, planned together, and risked everything together. He trusted their judgment. "We accept the offer, Jake Decay." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in 3,000 years. Representatives from over 800 species filled the grand chamber on the Council homeworld of Zentara. The room buzzed with worried voices, all discussing the impossible situation that had emerged at Viridian Prime. Supreme Chancellor Velnora stood at the central podium, waiting for silence. She was exhausted. Having spent the last 2 days managing the crisis, the humans had not just attacked a Council world. They had occupied it completely, and they had done it with technology that the Council did not understand. "Members of the Council," Velnora began, her voice amplified through the chamber, "we face a threat unlike any in our recorded history. The human species, which we believed extinct for 4 millennia, has returned with military capabilities that exceed our own. They have occupied Viridian Prime and are making demands that we cannot ignore." Councillor Threnica of the Peltheran Empire stood up, his red scales gleaming under the chamber lights. "Then we must mobilize our full military strength. We have thousands of ships. Whatever advantages these humans possess, we can overwhelm them with numbers." "Can we?" asked Ambassador Krisha of the Zentari. He was an old diplomat who had served the Council for 60 years. "These humans survived 4,000 years in hiding. They learned from us, studied us, and prepared for this moment. They did not return unprepared." "What are you suggesting?" Threnica demanded. "That we negotiate with invaders?" That we reward their aggression? I am suggesting we understand what we are dealing with before we commit to a course of action that might cost billions of lives, Krisha replied calmly. Admiral Kexthor stepped forward. His uniform still bore scorch marks from the battle at Viridian Prime. He had barely escaped with his life, and the experience had shaken him deeply. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, Kexthor said. Their ships can appear and disappear at will. Our sensors do not detect them until they want to be detected. Their weapons cut through our shields as if they were made of paper. And their soldiers are enhanced, modified for combat in ways that violate every council treaty on genetic manipulation. You sound as if you are afraid of them, Thranika said with contempt. I am afraid of them, Kexthor admitted. Any sane person would be. These are not the primitive humans of 4,000 years ago. They are something else now. Something we created when we tried to destroy them. On Viridian Prime, Jake Morrison walked through the streets of the capital city. He wore no armor, carried no visible weapons. Around him, his Marines maintained a careful watch, but Jake wanted the people to see him as a person, not just a soldier. The civilians watched him nervously. Most kept their distance, but a few brave souls approached. An elderly woman, her skin a pale blue, stepped forward. Are you going to kill us? She asked in a trembling voice. Jake looked at her kindly. No, we have no quarrel with you. Our fight is with the council that governs you, not with the people who live under their rule. Why are you here? Because 4,000 years ago the council destroyed our world. They killed billions of our people without warning or mercy. We are here to ensure it never happens again. The woman looked confused. I learned about Earth in school. They said humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community, that you would have started wars and caused chaos. Did your teachers mention that we never got a chance to prove them wrong? Jake asked. That they decided to kill us all based on what they feared we might do, not on anything we had actually done? The woman had no answer for that. She walked away slowly, and Jake continued down the street. Inside the governor's palace, Dr. Lisa Chang met with Governor Peltran. The old Orvani had been cooperative, providing information and helping to keep the population calm. Lisa wanted to understand why. You could have resisted, Lisa said. You could have made this difficult for us. Peltran sighed deeply. I could have gotten thousands of my people killed for nothing. Your forces are too strong. Resistance would have been suicide. There is more to it than that, Lisa observed. You do not seem surprised by what we told you. About Earth. Peltran was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up a file on his computer and turned the screen to face Lisa. It showed an old council document, marked as classified. 37% of the council voted against destroying Earth, Peltran said. My people were among them. We argued that humanity should be given a chance, that genocide was never justified no matter the potential threat. We were outvoted. Lisa read through the document, her eyes widening. Why is this still classified? Why does no one know about this? Because it is embarrassing. The council prefers to present a unified front. Admitting that over a third of its members opposed the decision would raise uncomfortable questions about the legitimacy of what was done. So you buried it and pretended it never happened, Lisa said bitterly. Not all of us forgot, Peltran replied. There are those of us who have carried the guilt of that decision for millennia. We knew that someday, somehow, there would be consequences for what the council did. I just never imagined I would live to see it. Back on the Retribution, Jake received new intelligence from Greg Walton. The council was mobilizing a fleet, gathering ships from across their territory. The numbers were staggering. 20,000 warships, more than humanity could hope to defeat in a direct battle. They will be here in 2 weeks, Greg reported. Maybe less if they push their engines hard. Paul Brennan studied the data. We can fortify our position, lay mines throughout the outer system, but 20,000 ships is too many. Even with our technological advantage, we cannot win that fight. Amy Sullivan looked worried. Should we withdraw? We made our point. Maybe we can negotiate from a position of strength. If we withdraw now, we look weak, Nina Harper argued. The council will see it as proof that we were bluffing. They will hunt us down and finish what they started 4,000 years ago. Jake listened to his officers' debate, but he had already made his decision. We are not withdrawing, but we are also not going to fight 20,000 ships in a straight battle. We need to change the situation. How? Carlos Bennett asked. We go to the people, Jake said. Not just the council leaders, but the citizens of every council world. We tell them the truth about what happened to Earth. We let them decide if they want to support a government that commits genocide. Lisa Chang smiled. You want to start a propaganda war? I want to start a conversation, Jake corrected. The council has controlled the narrative for 4,000 years. It is time people heard our side. Over the next several days, human ships began broadcasting messages throughout council space. They sent videos, documents, and testimony from the survivors of Earth's destruction. They showed the beauty of the world that was lost and the horror of its final moments. They shared the stories of refugees who had spent generations hiding in the darkness of space, clinging to survival. The response was immediate and dramatic. On hundreds of council worlds, protests erupted. Citizens demanded answers from their governments. Why had humanity been destroyed? What threat did they really pose? Who made the decision and how was it justified? The council tried to suppress the information, but it was too late. The truth was spreading faster than they could contain it. Social networks buzzed with debate. News organizations demanded access to the classified files. Even council member species began questioning the official story. On Zentara, Chancellor Velnora found herself besieged by angry representatives. The carefully maintained unity of the council was fracturing, split between those who supported the original decision and those who believed it was wrong. Ambassador Krisha approached Velnora privately. Chancellor, we need to negotiate. If we send that fleet to Viridian Prime, we will be declaring total war on humanity. Millions, perhaps billions, will die. Is that really what we want? What I want is irrelevant, Velnora said tiredly. The military faction is demanding action. They see this as a test of council authority. If we appear weak, other species might start questioning our leadership. So we kill humans to maintain our pride? Krisha asked. That is what this has become, Chancellor. Not about security or justice, but about pride and power. Velnora knew he was right, but she also knew that politics was rarely about being right. It was about maintaining control and managing competing interests. The council was a delicate balance of hundreds of different species, each with their own agenda. One wrong move could shatter that balance. Send a message to Commander Morrison, Velnora finally said. Tell him I want to negotiate. No conditions, no tricks. Just honest discussion about how to resolve this situation without more bloodshed. And the fleet? The diplomatic shuttle arrived at Viridian Prime 3 days later. It was small and elegant, painted in the golden colors of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Krisha led the delegation, accompanied by 3 advisors and a small security team. The humans had insisted that all weapons be left behind before boarding the Retribution. Jake Morrison met them in a conference room that had been specially prepared. The walls displayed images of Earth, rotating slowly to show the planet in different seasons and times of day. Every image was marked with a date, and every date was before the bombardment. Welcome aboard, Ambassador, Jake said, gesturing to the chairs around the table. I hope you will forgive the decorations. We find it helpful to remember what we are negotiating about. Krisha settled into a seat that had been designed for his body structure. He looked at the images of Earth with what might have been sadness in his large eyes. I have seen these images before, Krisha said quietly. In the classified archives. Your world was beautiful. What was done to it was a tragedy. A tragedy suggests an accident, Lisa Chang said from her position beside Jake. What happened to Earth was deliberate murder. One of the advisors, a Peltheran named Dexron, spoke up defensively. The decision was made by leaders who are long dead. You cannot hold the current council responsible for actions taken 4,000 years ago. But you benefit from those actions, Greg Walton replied, pulling up data on a holographic display. Your civilization enjoyed 4,000 years of peace and expansion without human competition. You built your prosperity on our graves. The room grew tense. Jake raised a hand to calm his people. We did not come here to argue about the past, Jake said. The past is unchangeable. What matters now is the future. Ambassador, your chancellor said she wanted honest negotiation. So let us be honest. What is the council prepared to offer? Krisha activated his own display, showing a document. The council is prepared to acknowledge that the destruction of Earth was a regrettable historical event. We can provide humanitarian aid and resources to help rebuild human civilization. In return, we ask that you withdraw from Viridian Prime and cease all hostile actions against Council worlds." "That is it?" Nina Harper asked incredulously. "You call genocide a regrettable event and offer us charity? What more do you expect?" Dexran demanded. "We cannot bring your world back. We cannot resurrect the dead. All we can do is try to move forward." "You can give us justice," Jake said firmly. "Real justice, not just empty words." "What would satisfy you?" Krishaw asked. "Be specific. What are your demands?" Jake leaned forward. "First, full acknowledgement that what happened to Earth was genocide, not just regrettable. The Council must formally apologize and accept responsibility. Second, reparations in the form of territory. We want star systems where we can rebuild our civilization without Council interference. Third, a seat on the Council with full voting rights. We will not be treated as second-class citizens in this galaxy. Fourth, those responsible for the decision to destroy Earth must be held accountable. The people responsible are dead," Dexran protested. "Then we hold their descendants accountable," Jake replied. "Or we establish a truth commission to examine what happened and ensure it never happens again. The point is not punishment. The point is acknowledgement that what was done was wrong." Krishaw studied Jake carefully. "Some of your demands might be negotiable, but a council seat? That is difficult. The Council has existed for millions of years. You are asking us to grant full membership to a species that has been spacefaring for only 4,000 years. We earned our place through survival," Lisa said. "We achieved in 4 millennia what most of you have not managed in 4 million years. We developed technologies you cannot match. We built a fleet from nothing. If that does not prove we deserve a voice in galactic affairs, what would?" The negotiations continued for hours. Both sides argued, proposed, and counterproposed. The humans refused to back down on their core demands, while the Council representatives kept insisting that some requests were impossible. Finally, Krishaw called for a break. The Council delegation retired to private quarters while Jake met with his senior officers. "They are not taking us seriously," Nina said angrily. "They think we will accept scraps and be grateful." "They are testing us," Paul Brennan observed, "trying to see how far they can push before we push back." Carlos Bennett pulled up new intelligence data. "Commander, we have a problem. Our sensors are detecting increased military activity in the sectors around us. The Council fleet is positioning itself for an attack." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Are you certain?" "The pattern is unmistakable. They are creating a blockade. If they complete it, we will be trapped here." "So the negotiations are a distraction," Amy said bitterly. "They are buying time to surround us." Greg Walton shook his head. "I do not think so. The Chancellor ordered negotiations in good faith. But there are military factions in the Council that do not want peace. Admiral Kexthor is leading a fleet toward our position without authorization." "A coup," Lisa realized. "The military is trying to force the Council's hand." Jake made a quick decision. "Get Ambassador Krisha back in here now." When the ambassador returned, Jake showed him the tactical data. Krisha's face went pale as he saw the fleet movements. "This is not authorized," Krisha said quickly. "Chancellor Velnora ordered the fleet to stand down during negotiations." "Then your admiral is acting on his own," Jake said. "In about 6 hours we are going to be surrounded by 2,000 Council warships. What do you suggest we do about that?" Krisha contacted the Council homeworld immediately. "Chancellor." Velnora appeared on the screen, and she looked furious when she saw the fleet data. "Admiral Kexthor is acting without my authority," Velnora said. "I am trying to stop him, but military communications are locked down. He has taken control of the fleet." "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "If Kexthor attacks you, the moderates in the Council lose all power. The military faction will demand total war. Everything we have been working toward will be destroyed." Jake looked at his tactical display. 2,000 ships against his 47 capital vessels and supporting craft. The math was brutal. Even with superior technology, his fleet would be overwhelmed. But Jake had not survived 4,000 years of exile by being predictable. "I have a proposal," Jake said to the Chancellor. "We help you stop Kexthor. We prove to the Council that humanity can be a force for peace, not just destruction. In return, you support our demands for territory and eventual Council membership." "You want to attack Council ships to save the Council?" Dexran asked in disbelief. "We want to attack rogue military forces to save the peace," Lisa corrected. "There is a difference." Velnora considered the offer. It was risky, but it might be the only way to prevent total war. "Agreed," Velnora said. "But you must promise to avoid civilian casualties and to accept Council authority once this is resolved." "We promise to defend ourselves and our position," Jake replied carefully. "Everything else is negotiable." The human fleet launched from orbit around Viridian Prime. Jake had ordered all non-essential personnel evacuated to the surface, leaving only the combat crews aboard the ships. This would be the most dangerous battle humanity had fought in 4,000 years. Admiral Kexthor watched the human ships approach on his tactical display. He smiled grimly. The humans were coming out to meet him, just as he had hoped. They would be destroyed in open space, far from the planet they had captured. "All ships prepare to engage," Kexthor ordered. "Target the human capital ships first. I want them eliminated quickly." But as the two fleets closed, something unexpected happened. Jake's ships did not form a defensive line. Instead, they scattered, using their slip-space drives to make micro-jumps that put them inside the Council formation. The Council ships found themselves firing at each other as the human vessels danced between them. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. "Target their command ship," Jake ordered. "Paul, divert all power to the main cannon." The Retribution's lights dimmed as every available power source was channeled to the massive weapon mounted along the ship's spine. It was experimental technology, untested in real combat. But Jake had no choice. He needed to end this quickly. "Target locked," Carlos announced. "Kexthor's flagship is in range." "Fire," Jake commanded. The ship shuddered as the cannon discharged. A projectile the size of a car shot across space at incredible speed. It hit Kexthor's flagship dead center, punching through shields and armor like they were made of paper. The flagship simply came apart, torn in half by the kinetic impact. The Council fleet faltered. Without their leader, confusion rippled through their ranks. Ships stopped firing, unsure what to do. Chancellor Velnora's face appeared on every screen in the battle space. "This is Chancellor Velnora to all Council forces. Admiral Kexthor was acting without authorization. All ships are ordered to stand down immediately. Any commander who continues this attack will face charges of mutiny." Slowly, the Council ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. Jake stood on the Bride of the Retribution, surrounded by his exhausted crew. They had won, but the victory felt hollow. 3 of their ships were damaged, and 12 crew members were dead. "Get me the Chancellor," Jake said quietly. 3 months had passed since the battle over Viridian Prime. The negotiations had continued day after day, sometimes running late into the night. Jake Morrison found himself spending more time in conference rooms than on the bridge of his ship, but he knew this was necessary. War was easy. Peace required patience. In a private meeting room aboard the Retribution, Jake reviewed the latest proposal from Chancellor Velnora. The document was long and filled with complicated legal language, but the basic terms were clear. Lisa Chang sat across from him reading her own copy. "They are offering us the Kepler Reach," Lisa said. 47 star systems. Most of them have planets that could support human life or could be made suitable with some work. "How far from Council space?" Jake asked. "Far enough that we would have our own territory, but close enough that we could still interact with the rest of the galaxy. It is actually a good location. Resources, trade routes, defensive positions. We could build something real there." Amy Sullivan pulled up a star map showing the Kepler Reach highlighted in blue. The systems formed a rough sphere of space, isolated but not completely cut off from the galactic community. "What about Council membership?" Amy asked. "Observer status for now," Greg Walton read from the proposal. "We can attend Council sessions, speak on issues that affect us, but we cannot vote. After 100 years, if we prove we can be peaceful neighbors, we get full voting rights. 100 years, Nina Harper said bitterly. They want us to wait a century before they treat us as equals. It is better than nothing, Paul Brennan pointed out. And it is not like any of us will be around to see it anyway. This is about our children and grandchildren, not us. Jake looked at the proposal again. It was not everything he had demanded. The council refused to hold war crimes trials, arguing that punishing the descendants of those who destroyed Earth was not justice. Instead, they offered a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a public forum where the historical decision would be examined and a formal statement of regret would be issued. It was not enough, but it was something. What do you all think? Jake asked his senior staff. Carlos Bennett spoke first. I think we came here for revenge, but we found something better. A future. If we keep fighting, we might win battles, but we will lose the war. The council has too many ships, too many worlds. Eventually they will overwhelm us. Lisa? Jake asked. I spent my entire life preserving Earth's memory. Lisa said softly. I thought justice meant making them pay for what they did. But maybe justice is making sure it never happens again. If we accept this deal, we become part of the galactic community. We get a voice. We can work to change things from inside the system. Nina? The colonel was quiet for a moment. I trained my whole life to fight, but I did not train to die pointlessly. This deal gives us what we need most. A home, a place to raise families and build cities and live without fear. That is worth more than revenge. One by one, his officers voiced their opinions. Some were hesitant, others more enthusiastic, but all agreed that the proposal was worth accepting. Jake listened to them all, then made his decision. Contact the Chancellor, Jake said. Tell her we accept the terms, but we want one addition to the agreement. Every council world must teach the true history of what happened to Earth, not as a footnote, but as a lesson about the cost of fear and the importance of giving people a chance. When Chancellor Velnora heard the request, she smiled for the first time in months. Agreed. I believe that lesson is one the entire galaxy needs to learn. The formal signing ceremony took place on Viridian Prime. Thousands of people gathered in the plaza where human Marines had first landed 3 months earlier. Now those same Marines stood as honor guards, their weapons pointed at the ground in a gesture of peace. Jake stood on a raised platform alongside Chancellor Velnora and Ambassador Krishaw. Behind them, representatives from hundreds of council species watched. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, with billions of viewers watching from their homes. Velnora spoke first. 4,000 years ago, the Galactic Council made a terrible decision. We destroyed Earth because we feared humanity's potential for aggression and rapid advancement. We believed we were protecting the galaxy. We were wrong. What we did was not security. It was genocide. Today, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize to the human species for this historic injustice. The crowd was silent. Many council citizens had spent the last 3 months learning the true story of Earth for the first time. The propaganda that had justified the bombardment had been exposed as lies and exaggerations. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. Jake stepped forward to speak. Humanity accepts the Council's apology. We accept the offer of the Kepler Reach as our new home. We accept observer status on the Council, with the promise of full membership in the future. But most importantly, we accept the opportunity to build something better, a galaxy where fear does not lead to violence, where different species can coexist without one trying to eliminate the other. He paused, looking out at the crowd. My people have spent 4,000 years in exile. We survived in dead systems and forgotten corners of space. We held on to our culture, our history, and our hope. Today, that exile ends. Today, humanity comes home. The crowd erupted in applause. Not everyone was happy with the agreement. Some council military leaders felt humanity got away with invasion and occupation. Some human survivors felt the deal did not go far enough to punish those responsible for Earth's destruction. But most people on both sides were simply relieved that the crisis had been resolved without total war. Over the following weeks, the human fleet began the journey to the Kepler Reach. The first ships arrived to find virgin worlds waiting to be colonized. Surveys showed that 3 planets could support human life immediately, while another dozen could be terraformed over time. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution as they entered orbit around the first colony world. It was a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents. The atmosphere was breathable, The gravity was close to Earth standard, and early scans showed no dangerous predators or diseases. "What should we name it?" Amy asked. Jake thought for a moment. "Hope. We will call it Hope." The first colonists began landing the next day. They were families who had spent generations living in cramped space stations, people who had never walked on solid ground or felt wind on their faces. Now they stepped out onto a new world, their world, and began building the future. Lisa Chung was among the first wave of colonists. She carried with her the archives of Earth, every piece of human history and culture that had been preserved. She established a museum in the first settlement, a place where future generations could learn about the world their ancestors had lost. "Do you think we will ever forget about Earth?" a young colonist asked her. "I hope not," Lisa said. "Earth is part of who we are. But this world, Hope, this is part of who we will become. We honor the past by building a better future." 6 months after the signing ceremony, Jake returned to Viridian Prime for the first meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Council historians presented evidence about the decision to destroy Earth, including the recordings of the original debate. Testimony was heard from the few surviving members of species whose ancestors had voted against the bombardment. The Commission's final report was published across the galaxy. It concluded that the destruction of Earth was an act of genocide, motivated by fear rather than legitimate security concerns. It recommended changes to Council law to prevent similar decisions in the future, and it called for ongoing dialogue between humanity and the Council to build trust and understanding. Not everyone was satisfied. Some Council members resigned in protest, refusing to accept the findings. Some human survivors rejected the report as too little, too late. But slowly, gradually, the wounds began to heal. Jake stood in his quarters aboard the Retribution, looking at an old photograph of Earth. It showed the planet from space, blue and white and green, alive and beautiful. He had carried this image with him for years, a reminder of what was lost. But now, for the first time, he could look at it without feeling only anger and pain. He felt sadness, yes, and regret for what might have been, but he also felt hope for what could still be. A message came through from the colony on Hope. His crew members who had chosen to settle there were sending reports. Cities were rising. Farms were being planted. Children were being born. The first generation of humans who would grow up on a world they could call home. Nina Harper had retired from military service and was training a new generation of security forces. Not for war, but for protection and peacekeeping. Paul Brennan was helping to build the infrastructure the colonies needed. Carlos Bennett was mapping the other systems in the Kepler Reach, identifying resources and opportunities. Amy Sullivan remained with Jake on the Retribution. The ship now served as humanity's voice in Council space, a reminder that humans were part of the galactic community now. "Do you ever regret it?" Amy asked Jake one day, choosing peace instead of revenge. Jake thought about all the battles they had not fought, all the Council worlds they had not attacked, all the blood they had not spilled. "Every day," Jake admitted. "I still want to make them pay for what they did. But I also know that revenge would not bring Earth back. It would not resurrect the dead. All it would do is